Hi guys, James Wilson Taylor here for Rock Sound. Welcome to another edition of the Rock Sound Rundown podcast where we're going through some of the biggest news stories happening right now. And the biggest news in Rock Sound world, a brand new issue is upon us, the first of 2026. Whole host of amazing cover stars. We're getting into that and so much more with, as always, my fellow writers here, Jack and Maddie. Hi guys, congrats on another great issue. Good work
Oh,
all round, everybody, as we go off to print this
Smashed it.
week. Yeah, all tired
yeah.
as ever, I'm sure. Like I say, loads of cover variants as ever, but I mean, the one I want to start with is the special anniversary cover that we've done here. It's Panic at the Disco, guys. So perfect timing, of course, because 20th anniversary edition of A Fever You Can't Sweat Out is on streaming now. I kind of want to start there. I've been getting stuck into that album in a big, big way. The demos are fascinating for a start
Oh, yeah.
because it's so, I mean, as you might expect with most demos, obviously it starts in a very, very different place to the final product, but it's such a radical shift with some of these. Like, it really does show how that changing instrumentation and the production quality that then came in on the final record completely transformed who that band are. A lot of it really sounds like a lot more straightforward kind of rock band territory. You know, we know there were all those very early comparisons to Fall Out Boy, as you might expect, with the Pete connection and all that stuff. But that comes through so much more on the demos, doesn't it? It's really, really interesting, particularly on something like Lying and various tracks like that. You're like, oh, this was a really different band to start with, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a big thing I noticed was how much heavier it sounds as well. And there's a big kind of, there's such a rawness. And I think it's so much you even said in the mag, or so much Matt Squire said about when they were, writing I Write Sins. And Ross's kind of reaction was that it sounds too much like Thrice.
Hmm.
And it's like, and then they added in the different parts and that. But then when you listen back to some of these, like when you listen to Sins is a good example, but it's better if you do is another one. A lot of the top end of the album as well, it feels more like that straight up, like inspired by what had come before, because we're talking about 2004, 2005 here. We're at a point where post-hardcore was trying to make and was being infiltrated into the, mainstream, was major labels were really trying. But then you can see that again, these were kids who weren't kind of from that.
Hmm.
So it's like they're surrounded by all these things, but then they're also like, well, we're theatre kids. We like Les Mis and we like top hats and we like all this and we're 18 and we're not going to be told what to do there. But yeah, you can even just there's a different sort of aggression which doesn't come across in the
Hmm.
further bits, which it makes you wonder where the band would have gone if they weren't driven by that side of things.
I
Like
mean,
what we'd
yeah.
be talking about now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're right to mention. I had a conversation with Matt Squire, original producer of the record. It's so fascinating, and just he was talking as well about when we were young, which I'm sure we'll come on to. Like the fact that it was so nice for him to see Brendan and Spencer for the first time in years, and they just all pick up right where they left off, and all these memories come flooding back. But like he mentioned that really the catalyst was that he brought them the second album by a band called Jellyfish, which is very much in that kind of brighter, almost Queen-esque kind of theatricality element to it. And it's when they were kind of dueling those ideas of, okay, we've got all this kind of more Fall Out Boy sounding stuff here. We want to kind of go down this route. And that's when they kind of started striking upon the different instrumentation. I Write Sins being obviously the perfect example, taking that riff and then putting it on Pizzicato's strings. What a genius move that is. But it's also, what he did say is that it's so funny to look back at how inexperienced all of them were. He was very early on in his career, but we kind of forget when it came out so full formed, and then obviously the album went on to have such immediate success, or what felt like immediate success. These were kids, like their first ever tour, their first time in a recording studio, like literal teenagers figuring it out as they went along. Maddie, I guess that's maybe I look back now, that's almost kind of mainly part of the appeal for me. I think looking back,
Yeah.
being a young kid at the time as well, seeing someone who was that close to your own age getting up there and doing it. I feel like maybe that was part of the success in terms of growing that fan base a little bit at the time.
Yeah, big time. I mean, that's what I like about these demos, is you can literally hear that. Like there's so much of it that is scrappy as hell. There's like so many points where you're like, they didn't have a clue what they were doing here. Like they were just figuring it out as they kind of played around with it. Like if you listen to something like London Beckoned, the synth at the start of that is crazy. Like I don't know who even thought that would be a an idea, but like there's just so many things where you can tell that they're playing around with it, they're having fun. There's no one kind of being like, that doesn't sound right. What should we do here? Like they're just trying out loads of different ideas and having a great time with it. And I think that's the magic of a first album a lot of the time. Like a debut is the opportunity to play around with all that stuff. You don't have a sound yet. You don't have anything set in stone. You can just have fun with it. And yeah, the demos, you can hear them having fun with it. And that's just so, so cool.
It's so funny as well. One of the best things was going back deep into the Rock Sound archive. I think I pulled out pretty much everything we've ever done on Panic, long before we were ever working there at Rock Sound, but like going right back into the depths and just finding little gems and like things like Pete Wentz saying that he was really pressuring the label for the like he wanted the first single to be Time to Dance. How
Yeah.
wrong was that man? That man's made many good decisions in his own career over time, but what a terrible
Are
decision
you
that would have been.
kidding?
Isn't
Are
that
you
hilarious? That it could have been Time to, and apparently the label was saying that as well, and like it was the band going adamant like I Write Sins is our statement. We've got to get up. That's the one to take to radio and smartest move they ever made, obviously.
But don't you realize that I think that's also the show of what, because the first half of the album is that very straight up, kind of what followed in like to that, like when Panic were on to Pretty Odd and doing like something completely different, there were so many bands coming up which were carry on that FOB sound, but carrying on their kind of straight up emo thing. And like Pete's right, Time to Dance would have sold loads. Like it would have done really well as that lead, but like they it they would have just been left in with that kind of like the rest of the pile. Like it would have got lost in MySpace, that
Yeah.
but to make that kind of jump where because All Right Sins is a weird song. I think we're so used to it. It's such an utterly bizarre, weird concoction of things, a story being told, which again in the mag, Matt says the story of what Ryan was actually
Yeah,
writing
come
about,
on to that. Yeah,
and
it's crazy.
it's completely different to how people have interpreted it, how the video looks, like all of the stuff that you know. Again, what would it be if they hadn't have pushed? Well, we want to be the traveling circus. Like
Mm.
what would we, where would we be? If we didn't allow ourselves to be this weird. And, I Write Sin shouldn't work as a single, but
Mm.
now it's played in every rock club around the world multiple times every weekend. Like it's played at weddings. Like it's in the
Which
emo
is
section.
odd, which I do still find
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah, that's too
Yeah.
much.
That's a partly a step too far, that one maybe, but who knows?
A bit too meta.
Yeah, just a little bit. Just winking a little too much at it there. I don't know. Strange one, that. You're right to bring up the lyrics thing, though, because I mean, of course, it's well documented that Ryan Ross, contributing much of the lyrics to that first record. Obviously, channeling a lot of his own pain, his own frustration, a lot of his own personal stories there. There's a lovely quote from the archive where he talks about basically why he's really glad that Brendan's fronting it because it allows him to kind of push further with his lyrics than he would have done and be more open because he knows he's not the one who's going to have to go and deliver it. And he also trusts that Brendan's going to do it in a theatrical way. It's really, really nice to look back on how they kind of all gelled together in those early days like that. But also, yeah, Squire points out the kind of what should be incredibly obvious because we knew that Ryan talking about, his upbringing and kind of, his parents' relationship and stuff is very much present and correct in that album. Maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe I'm the stupidest man in the world and it just never clicked for me. But haven't you people ever heard of Closing the Goddamn Door is about hearing his parents argue and wanting everything to stop? How has that never clicked in my head before? I felt infuriated. I felt like a light bulb going off. And like Squire's telling me this, I'm like, of course that's what it's about. And what a beautiful, succinct way of putting it. And I think, again, I encourage people to read the interview. But like Matt really goes into detail about how that was kind of really the catalyst of where that song kind of finally clicked together. And yeah, it's incredible that how that one line sums up the entire theming and yeah, I don't know. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's kind of misinterpreted that one over the years, but the minute you say it, just like, wow, what an perfect encapsulation of everything he's kind of trying to say across a lot of the lyrics on the album, really.
It's also, I think it changes the words poison rationality as well, because he's basically
Mm,
saying, like, it's almost like going into it saying, what you're doing now is going to affect me for the rest of my life. The
yeah,
way that you're acting within this, can you do it a bit, not even just more privately, but can you do it a bit more, which isn't going to stick with me? And
yeah,
then, yeah, like, again, it kind of shows why Ryan would want to fall into these different worlds, want to create in these different ways, want to push away from this reality into something
yeah.
stranger. Because like his time, that time in the band when he was writing those things, it was very much like, well, very escapism,
Mm.
very odd, very fantastical compared to what was actually happening, when he was writing in his bedroom, which
Yeah.
it makes the whole thing feel a lot sadder.
Yeah,
But like
yeah,
also,
no, it certainly
Yeah, it really
does. It
does.
certainly does, man.
Yeah.
And then the interesting thing, as I say, the fact that he was trusting Brendan to then deliver it and able to push
yeah.
himself further. There's a lovely bit as well about that. The Squire talks about remembering Brendan finally be able to deliver the vocals because he's talked about this a little bit before, but Brendan had major, major vocal struggles on that first record. His voice basically went for a lot of the recording session. It was a very tight recording session as well. And it's only really after Squire sent him off to a vocal coach and stuff, and they were able to, lots of teas, lots of remedies, all that stuff. And then finally gets in the booth and it just clicks and they both go, right, let's rattle out all the high register stuff right now. And he said it was just like watching a machine at work, just finally clicking all that together and making it go. And I gotta say, we'll come on to when we were younger, obviously the kind of more recent stuff there, but I think we can all agree when we saw them in Vegas back in October,
Oh,
that's the best Brendan sounded in years to me. I've
Oh
got to
man.
say, talented, talented man, but that time away, I think he's gone and reconfigured his voice a little bit, and that was a powerhouse performance. So especially the album stuff in the first half. I've got to say, I really do think, and I've seen that band live many, many, many times over the years. That's easily the best vocally I think I've ever seen him.
Yeah, easy. I mean, I was listening through the album for months beforehand, and there were so many points where I was like, I don't want to doubt him, but there's no way he's hitting that. Like, there is absolutely no way he's gonna have to take that down. Like, there's absolutely no way he's even gonna attempt it. And then we got there, and I remember literally just standing there, and my jaw was dropping multiple times because I was like, no, he's doing it. He really is doing it. And yeah, his vocals have just come up a whole other level. Like, this is genuinely the best he's ever sounded. I've seen them 7 times over the years. And there's literally no way that anything was ever as good as that because it was just insane. Like I
Yeah,
could not believe what we were
I
seeing there.
fully
and
agree. I fully agree.
yeah,
Okay.
he was doing it with a smile as well and a
Yeah.
swagger that wasn't there. On the Viva Las Vengeance tour, which was the farewell, you saw him pushing himself to be that showman in a way which is like this is what's expected of me, I think. And you could see that his voice was sometimes maybe being pushed to that, and he was thinking, I used to be able to do this and not. But like it's that combination of skill, but also making it look effortless, which is what he did at that show. Like, that to be able to make a performance feel flawless, even though you are putting your all into it, is one of the hardest things that a band or an artist can do. But
Mm.
like but also make it look like you're putting the work in, but also like you are enjoying it, rather than putting your finger up to your ear and like trying to, the way that guitarists like have to look at their fretboard sometimes to keep up. He was just like he was spinning,
Yeah.
like the shimmers, like his jacket was sparkling in the Vegas lights. Like
There it is.
he was having so much fun with it. And
Yeah.
I think that's the big old difference because I think in the past, as you say, like when he was 19 to 20, like you were kids, your body's changing still. You're worried that you're not going to live up to what people want it to be. But like as a fully rounded musician now that's popping back in and is going, all right, well, I smashed it. I'll see you later.
Mhm.
Maybe never again. Who
Yeah.
knows? But
I
like,
mean, well,
yeah,
that was
it's a
the other.
lasting memory.
That's the
That's the
question.
interesting thing, and that is the question. I don't know. I mean, it certainly looks like that's it, and a glorious one-off, if so. And like, obviously,
What
the
a way.
reissues out there, so they're celebrating the
Oh,
album
yeah.
in that way too. Um, I will say there's a lovely little quote. I don't want to spoil it too much, but again, Squire just kind of said, there was a point he was stood in the crowd and he's next to Sam Hollander, who was obviously, for anyone who doesn't know, kind of co-wrote a lot of the later Panic stuff, whether that's Say Amen, Emperor's New Clothes, a lot of kind of Death of the Bachelor and Pray for the Wicked era stuff. He was heavily, heavily involved in. And Squire was like, I'm stood there and I'm looking at Brendan on stage and I'm looking at Sam next to me and I'm looking at Brendan on stage because Sam next to me. And he's like, well, the one thing that never happened was all three people here teaming up in a big way.
Oh,
And I was like, it's wishful thinking, but my God, imagine that would be, you've got the mega hit era of the later days mixed with all the weirdness and stuff that kind of came in those first era. That would be a hell of a record if they ever decided to do it. But who knows, man. I do want to quickly shout out as well. I mean, the whole band was so tight on there. I mean, Nicole's an absolute beast, obviously, but I want to particularly shout out Mike, who's been playing on guitar in the last few years because those backing vocals are no joke, man. You can hear it on the record, but all those overlaps and everything. And this man put the effort in and he got the job done. So shout out, Mike, dude. You absolutely went above and beyond for that particular show. But yeah, I mean, like I say, the reissue sounds great. I love the remaster of the record. Live album on there. It's nice to have that officially. The demos are really interesting. I really encourage people to check it out, man. If you're a Panic fan, this was such a fascinating conversation with Squire, and being able to go back in the archive, pull out a load of photos that were never used in that original cover shoot back in 2006, and loads of stuff, chats with Ryan and Spencer and Brendan from over the years, and Pete Wentz and other people close to the record. Go check out if you're a fan. It's really interesting conversation in there. Festival season is fast approaching, and the team at Danny Women Presents have put together some incredible lineups for their first key events of the year. Welcome to Rockville kicks off May 7th at Daytona International Speedway in Florida. Guns N' Roses, Foo Fighters, Bring Me the Horizon, and My Chemical Romance right at the top of that bill, alongside a huge list of names across 5 stages and 4 days. And over in Columbus, Ohio, May 14th to the 17th, Sonic Temple Festival will take over with My Chem, Shinedown, Bring Me the Horizon, and Tool, plus the likes of Pierce the Veil, Good, Charlotte, Motionless in White, The Offspring, Megadeth, Electric Callboy, Simple Plan, and so many more. Tickets are available now. Guys, I can tell you, if you're traveling from the UK, it is more than worth the trip for these amazing mega US festivals. So get your tickets now and check out more info via DannyWimmerPresents.com. Another cover star. Let's talk 5 Seconds of Summer, ladies and
Oh,
gentlemen. Boys are back. Nice to have them back on the cover. I got to say, nice to do the solo covers we did as well. Nice little nod to the first time they were ever on the cover of Rock Sound. Collect them all. I love that, especially now they're making a little nod to the boy band labels and stuff. It's really nice to do something like that. Extra cool. Maddie, I mean, talk to me about this, because I know you're a fan of the new record, obviously. I think it's a really exciting era for the band, but crucially, as much as I think they've been very settled for a while now in who they are and what they want to achieve, there's something about this new album where they feel just a little extra confident, just a little more. I don't know. It feels very them, and exactly the sort of thing that I think they should be doing at this point in their career.
Yeah, I mean, it's very obvious that they're just done trying to pander to anyone. Because I think on every record before, there's at least a tiny part of them that's trying to do what other people want them to do or what people expect from them. And when I was talking to the band, they were the first to admit that. They said this is the only time they've ever kind of got into a process and been like, we don't care what anyone else thinks. Like, we are literally just focusing on what we want to do as musicians, as people, and as people who know this band better than anyone. And I think it's really kind of easy to think that the fans know the band better than they know themselves. I think as a fan, people often kind of think, yeah, well, we know what they need to do next. We know what the next record needs to sound like. When in reality, there is literally no one in the world that knows what the next era needs to sound like apart from the band themselves. And they're always going to work best when they just completely detach themselves from anything outside of that. And I think that's literally what they've done here. They've basically just said, you know what, like, we've spent a decade and a half now trying to just kind of assemble Five Sauce into what other people want it to be. And we've kind of chipped away at it. We've remolded it. We've done all these things to kind of keep doing what we want to do and make albums that we're really proud of. But they've always kind of had that little bit of shadowing over them of other people's opinions. And this is kind of the first time where it's just like, you know what, let's just do it. And let's do it like the boldest possible way that we can. And yeah, that's what it is. It's a super bold album. Like,
It is a super bold album, and
it's
it also
crazy.
nods to so many different eras. I mean, it's like you've got those moments that feel like a twisted version of what they were in the old school. But also, I think that partly comes from the fact that, you look at that last tour they did, that last touring run with the Five Star Show, and that brilliant moment that I know all the fans have talked about, everyone's talked about, with the dice, right? So they throw a giant dice out into the crowd, and there's proper old school deep cuts on each side, and whatever one it lands on, oh, I'm sure it's not planned. Whatever one it lands on, they then play, and being that comfortable to get up and play an absolute banger like Heartache on the big screen, for example.
Oh,
Yeah, tune. But being able to have that confidence to be like, yeah, B-side off the first EP back when we were doing nothing but pure pop punk. Yeah, we're going to revisit that now. And it feels like that kind of sentiment is kind of all over the record. I know the boy band label obviously I've mentioned, but there's something about where they sit now where they're happy to sort of tip their cap to the past as long as they're still pushing themselves forward too.
Yeah,
I,
like there's so
yeah.
many moments that are like that. Like, it's such a good album. I could rattle on about it all day. Go for it, Jack.
Sorry, I was just thinking because it's the interesting thing they chat about as well is off the back of these shows is when they did the performance when like to launch a lot of this when they were in the box, separated from the crowd, that it's like they're doing all these things which are bold, but they're also still very nervous about them. And that like you say that they have this kind of feeling of like feeling comfortable going and doing these old bits, but also, there's still the fact that I think they forget how big they actually are, that they can do this, that they're still these four lads who are just doing what feels right, and they still get the nerves, they still get the worries that whether they, even though they're doing their own thing, are they doing it right? Are they doing something which is going too far? And I think that humility helps so much and comes across again in this record where they are poking fun at a lot of things which have been thrown their way, but also they're not doing it in a sneering way.
Yeah.
They're kind of they're still very much like, well, we still have a lot of respect for ourselves, but we also have a lot of respect for our fans, and we still have a lot of respect for the journey that we've been on. Because it could be very easy. You see bands do it a lot where they get to the point where they're their own self and they throw off the shackles of what they used to be and don't care about it and kind of sneer back at the versions. But to make that to be a complete version of yourself in this way is it takes a lot more bravery than people think. But also to still be kind of like nervous about whether you are making the right moves takes even more bravery because they are super like so they say everyone's a star, but like they are stars. They've been
Yeah.
stars since the beginning. Like they've grown up in the spotlight and like they could very easily just like use that to their advantage, but they still want to do things which, scare them, scare everyone around them.
I think it's nice as well, like the other kind of meaning of everyone's a star, I suppose, like we do forget that like since the last album, all of them have done solo material. And I think that only helps like when they all get back in the studio together again, everyone having more ideas to contribute, even just from the element of going off and having these very different experiences outside on their own. Of course, it's going to influence how you approach things as a songwriter or how you approach things you want to do a group, even if it's things that you've, discovered that you don't want to do anymore and all that kind of stuff. So that's the other kind of interesting element is that the four parts separately have all like grown greater and are going to make the whole even better. That definitely I think has contributed to the fact that this is quite a diverse record from them, and again, as we keep saying, pushing that kind of slightly new. I mean Not Okay was a big surprise, I think, when it came out as that lead single. I was not expecting it to sound quite the way it did, but it does somehow still fit for them in a big way.
Yeah, I think Not Okay is like that full just kind of mentality of just being like, we're just gonna do what we want to do. And I think Not Okay is not a single you put out if you're trying to play it safe. Like it's not the song you lead with if you don't want people to think, okay, we're expecting something different here. Like this band has really shaken things up with this one.
Mm.
And I mean, it's a banger, but it's not what anyone thought they'd come out with. It's not what, especially after Five Sauce Five. Like that album was so kind of ethereal and calming and very kind of just vibey, I
Yeah.
guess. And then coming into this to just come out with a song that is straight up like party vibes, like just feels like you've been shoved into some kind of like European club.
Mm.
Like it's crazy. Like it's an absolutely baller move.
Yeah.
But it was, I think, what they had to do to kickstart this era because it set up that expectation for the record. It set up that expectation of we're gonna get some weird stuff here, but we're gonna get some stuff that they really want to do, some stuff that they're really passionate about, and that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, sets the tone. Definitely sets the tone
Yeah.
moving forward, and definitely sets the tone for this tour. I mean, that's the kind of thing it's about to kick off really at time of recording in the next within the next couple of months. I think it is coming over to the UK, of course, big arenas as you might expect. I think the pressure's on a little bit. That last tour felt like a real defining moment for them. Like I say, it was almost their, dare I say it, their sort of era's tour moment. It certainly felt like that, nodding to their past, definitely ticking off every kind of era of the band in a big way. Um, I'm really intrigued to see what they do. Always reliable live. Got to say that since the very beginning, even when these boy band labels were getting thrown around and everything, like it didn't matter to me. They were a solid live act that really kind of always impressed me in that way, even on those first couple of records. And when they were straight out the gate, it was always a really fun show. So, I mean, I'm excited to check it out if nothing else, but at the same time, I'm really, really curious to see, I guess, what from the back catalog is going to get touched on in a big way, and do they try and work it into the kind of world they're playing with now? Like, how's it all going to balance out? Maddie, being the diehard fan that you are, though, of course, is there any particular bangers you want to see in there? Is there anything from the back catalogue that you would particularly love to see in this tour?
I'm always calling for the return of Pizza and Wrapped Around My Finger. Um, the best songs I've ever written. Pizza feels like a cop out, but it's so good. So
Nice.
like I remember Pizza coming out when I was like 15 and I
Mm.
was convinced it was like the greatest song ever written, even though it's like 30 seconds long. I was like, this is literally the best song anyone has ever made.
Brilliant.
And yeah, it's just super fun to see them like mess around with that pop punk vibe of them. So yeah, but Wrapped Around My Finger is like the ultimate five-star song for me. So
Nice.
that
Solid
needs to make a
choice.
comeback.
Solid choice. I feel like something, particularly the stuff from the Youngblood era, I feel like they could almost. I mean, Youngblood's not a million miles away as a song from what they're playing with now, but I quite like
Yeah.
the idea of them messing around with those elements a little bit. Let's bring in some of that crazier production that we're hearing on the new record and maybe kind of mess about. I don't know. That's just me fantasy casting what I'd like to see there, but we'll see. We'll see. It's kicking off very soon. And again, yeah, if you want to read that full in-depth interview with Maddie, it's in the new issue available now, guys. So do go and check that one out.
You can get this, and all of your other My Chemical Romance merch at shop.rocksound.tv.
And lastly, let's mention the remaining cover stars for this issue. Obviously, a little bit of a theme there, the stars of 2026. We did this last year, stars of 2025. I think we did pretty well predicting that, didn't we? The Warning, come on. Jamie Bauer, just in that small TV show, come on. I think we did all right picking these out.
He's doing all right for himself.
Sleep Theory, just selling out any venue they announce in 2 seconds. Yeah, I think we did all right. Rory as well, top 10. And who was the other one? Lolo. Yeah, I think we nailed that one. Back for 2026 here. Nice mix of, some kind of more established acts who we think are going to have a massive year, and then some newer artists too. I want to begin with the UK's own South Arcade. It's been bubbling up for a minute. I mean, we've talked about this before on this podcast, but like seeing them do the Forum, seeing them do their headline shows last year, it's poised for bigger and bigger rooms. It's really nice talking to them about where they are. I think I can reveal here that there's another EP that's being worked on at the minute, is what they told me. Before they kind of get onto album things, I think that's quite nice and kind of suits where they're at. It's nice to be able to progress in that way and give the fan base, keep giving the fan base new stuff basically as they go along. But again, it feels like it's just there for the taking at the minute. They are in a really interesting position as well, being a band from the UK sitting in a genre that I think's been predominantly dominated by US artists. I think it puts them in a really, really interesting position. But yeah, I mean, we've mentioned it before, but South Arcade, it feels like 2026 is when it's going to really explode there, right?
There's a lot of so you mentioned how it is that kind of like US sound that like has dominated this, but I also think because of the time that they're kind of moving back to, like the fact that you have songs like 2005, it's like you are hitting it on the nose there. But I think it fits in with bands like A when you think back to stuff like that. The UK did a lot of this stuff, and I think what they do is even though they're generating a lot of what was going on the other side of the Atlantic, this still feels predominantly British. I think British rock has gone through so many different iterations, but like throughout the past 20 years, no one has really gone back and really nailed on what this is. I think another band just to mention, which is on the same kind of wavelength, is Dead Pony, who are like, I think the two work in sync where they created this really heavy, vibey vibe, but like without losing any of where they're from and why they're doing it and what this is that and for South Arcade, it's like it's very easy to do these things and it feel like a nostalgia bait, but this they feel so fresh. Every song feels fresher than the last. They're constantly pushing themselves into things which no one else is doing because no one else does sound like this. That it's looking back to the past, but with the intent of going to the future.
Mm.
And James, you do mention that, going from venue to venue I've my friend Kyle actually films the shows for the band, live sets, and has been doing them like from in the crowd and seeing the atmosphere from in that crowd, when he's getting right in there and it's not just singing along, it's not just dancing, it's people having the time of their life for 45 minutes, like how it used to be, how you used to save up, and wait for months to go to a show. And then you'd be there from opening of doors to the end, and you'd walk out and like you've ruined your clothes because you've got so sweaty in the pit that you have to like buy merch. And then you sleep like 10 hours because you're so exhausted from how much fun you've had. that vibe's been gone for a long time, and for a band like this to be able to bring that back around, it just feels right. It reminds me of how it used to be when I was 16, and
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
nice. Well,
That's
I
it.
mean, speaking of that, like, there's a really lovely moment I talked to Harmony, of course, about. I'm sure people saw this online, but Good Things in Australia at the end of last year. Jenna from Tonight Alive pulled her
yeah,
up on stage, and they performed a little duet together. And she was just talking about how much that meant to her because she was playing "Lonely Girl on the Edge" on repeat, walking to school in the morning. I think you're right that it taps into that sort of era almost, that kind of. I don't know, like it's a pre-social media kind of that scene where it felt like absolutely everything. I don't know. There's it's really nice to see someone like Jenna recognize that and kind of give a little tip of the cap, kind of pass. I don't want to say pass the baton because Jenna's still kicking about, but you know what I mean? Like very much giving that generational pull of like, here you go, kid, let's see what you can do. And it definitely meant the world to Harmony. She was very enthusiastic about it. But yeah, lovely to see how that's progressing for sure. Let's touch on some of these other ones as well. Balu Brigada. I'm sure a lot of people who read Rock Sound probably caught them last year on the 21 Pilots tour, opening up for those guys. Went down a storm with that crowd, I gotta say. There's a lot of kind of obvious comparisons between, especially some of the early Pilot sound, I think, in terms of what they're doing. Um, I mean, it sounds incredibly obvious and basic to point out, but my God, these guys can write a catchy melody. You know what I mean? Like all of these singles that keep coming out, they are earworms instantly. And again, getting to see them even at something like Reading and Leeds last summer, seeing how well that crowd reacted to that performance, that's a real test, isn't it? Because a lot of the time, particularly in those tents at Reading and Leeds, it's just kids wandering from one place to the other. You've got to make sure you're grabbing some attention there, and I think they really, really did. But the album's great, and they're about to come over and do their biggest ever UK headline shows in a few weeks' time. I mean, I'm very excited to see how that develops because it feels like it's just on the cusp of again exploding in a really, really big way, right?
Yeah, I think the thing with these guys is that people forget how hard it is to write an incredible hook.
Mm.
Like you can write the most complex song in the world. You can write a song that kind of delves into some of the weird stuff. It really kind of feels very intricate and technical. But the hardest thing in the world is probably just to write a hook that actually does get stuck in people's heads, that people can hear as they're walking down the road, as they're not even listening to it anymore, that people kind of really cling on to. The kind of thing that if you walk past on a festival stage, you're going to turn your head and be like, wait, what is that? Like, and that is what they do. Like every single song they put out has one of those because they're
Mm.
just so, so good at writing things that just get absolutely lodged in your brain. And yeah, I think that's a thing that people do underestimate with a lot of bands. They kind of think that that's an easy thing to do. If that was
Yeah.
an easy thing to do, why is every band not writing hits 24/7? Like, it's not easy.
I mean, to throw back to our panic conversation slightly again, another little nugget that Squire threw out at me that I just thought was absolutely hilarious is that when they were writing Camisado, apparently he came into the studio one day and the band had just thrown out the "can't take the kid for the fight, take the fight for the kid" bit, and he was just like, "I work with bands who would cut their arm off for a hook like that. Put it back in." It's like, yeah, when you've got gold like that, it is a rarity for sure. And you're right, I do think Baloo have got some really, really catchy stuff in there. Jack, I'm going to come to you on Imminence. Obviously, you interviewed them for the
yes.
cover as the mag as well. Obviously, been kicking around a minute, but it does feel like it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Roundhouse, of course, we mentioned before, doing that amazing headline show. So atmospheric, so clever. And now that the Black era's kind of wrapped up, I think it's theirs for the taking now, isn't it? It feels like we're here for a big step up on whatever this next era is going to be from them.
Absolutely. Well, just at the point because it was before I interviewed them, I realized I'd seen them at the Black Heart in London in 2017 when they released This Is Goodbye, a song which now they pay tribute to as part of the acoustic part of this show, which again, I think I've mentioned it before, but the bravery of doing a full 5 song stripped back piece with an orchestra at a sold out venue is something that not a lot of bands could get away with. But you could hear a pin drop for this because there's so much respect within there for this. But to have watched, yeah, that growth over the past decade and how they have incorporated more and more of who they are within this, rather than like molding out their own scene within this, their own vibe to the point where now it's more than just music, it's a show, it's a color, it's an atmosphere. And I think the big thing they did say, which is, a I think it's important to say that within all of what they've been doing off the back of Toy in the Black, they have recorded a new album. Like it is, that like the Black finale was them waving goodbye, and now attention turns to this new thing. And a big point I wanted to make is how they're not just picking up where they left off. They're doing something, they want to do something different, because I think what that album showed is that you can do everything that you want and people will respond. Because there aren't many bands that you're going to see where the lead singer is screaming into a violin while the guitarist uses the other part of a violin to go down his strings and it captivate everyone. That to do that is a huge thing. And I think the fact that they're going to keep on moving with that and not just stick to a certain atmosphere, a certain vibe, a certain kind of expectation is why they're going to keep on getting bigger, is why they're going to keep on getting more people coming to see them, because they're not afraid of what's in front of them. And they're not afraid to, I think burn down is a dramatic way of doing it, but like almost turn the back and not depend on the past versions of themselves, of
Yeah.
what they've done before, that even with all of this success, they still want to dare to dream of what something else can be. And I think, all the luck to them. And I think the fact that they've done it, I think it's going to pay off.
Hmm.
But whatever, I think that the more that I think the fact that they spent so much time on the Black show allowed the depth of those songs to really sink in, and how they added in more parts. Like God-Fearing Man, which was on the Return of the Black, is just a ridiculously atmospheric opener of an album now. But then, that's something which I've never heard any other bands really do, like fit on that. So to keep on trying those things and to keep on pushing it will only mean good things for this
Yeah,
band. And I think,
absolutely. I think you're right in terms of talking about the atmospherics there, because that is what cuts through, isn't it? If you can build a mood and build a world around that, that's what really cuts through, particularly in the heavy music world, and leads very nicely onto our final cover star, which is Dayseeker, who have been amazing at doing that over the last few years, and particularly on this latest record, which I'm gonna say I think it's their crowning achievement so far. I think it is some of their absolute best work on there. Um, I mean, Rory's vocals are phenomenal, and just seeing that again, the atmosphere. I think I mentioned this before, but like seeing Rory's little videos that he's been putting up on Instagram recently of like a kind of stripped back session of just him and the piano. Whoo, man, see
oh yeah,
those songs in a whole new light, but still somehow fits that kind of moody atmosphere that we very much heard across that record. About to come over to the UK, of course, opening up for Motionless in White in some big old arenas from next week at the time of recording. I'm so excited to see this live show again, man. I feel like it's interesting with those songs, as much as that's not their headliners, it feels like they're built for bigger and bigger rooms, this latest record, I think.
Yeah, I think the thing
yeah,
with this record is how, I guess, just kind of, I hate using like the world buildy word, but like
Yeah.
it feels like it's got this whole like world around it. Like it's so easy when you're listening to that song to kind of picture an environment, like you're reading like kind of a book and you're picturing this whole kind of thing build in your head. And I think that's what they've done so well on this new record is they've made songs that have that mood around them, have that feeling, have that emotion. And it's all these different things that there are so many options for them with the live show. Like you can picture how something like that would come to life on a stage. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what they do with some of these new songs because there's so much there. There's so much to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's going to be a really, really incredible time to see how this translates to the stage. I'm also, just on a personal note, really intrigued to see what Rory's wearing, because man, that guy can pick a jacket. I
oh
need to
yeah,
get in touch with
oh
Rory,
yeah.
man. Honestly, those Instagram videos of him on the piano, he's in a beautiful looking purple jacket. Rory, next time I see you, we are exchanging notes on that, because yes,
Didn't
I'm
didn't
pulling the
you
pin.
pick up? Didn't you pick up one? He was
I think
wearing a P and
exactly the
Co.
same. He turned up at
Yeah.
downloads in a P and Co shirt. Shout out P and Co, by the way. You're a wonderful company, please. He turned up in a P and Co shirt that was no longer available, and I was absolutely furious because I tried to buy it, and then I found a similar one on Vinted. But yeah, maybe next time I interview him, I'll turn up in a P and Co shirt, and we'll see if we end up matching or something similar to that. Because man, clothing taste. It's
Yeah.
secondary to the music, but yeah, hell of a taste in clothing, Rory. Well, you can read nothing about his clothing, but lots about the album in the new issue, of course. Still available, guys. Shop.rocksound.tv. You can pick up that. We've got exclusive t-shirts from several of them as well. Loads of posters, all that kind of good stuff. It is out there available to you right now. Should note as well, US store is up and running, guys. So US fans out there, if you've been killed by what I know is horrible shipping, that's how much it costs to send things from the UK to the US these days, guys. It sucks, but we're set up there now. Shipping is way cheaper out your way as well now. So do go and check out our US store if you're out there. That's about it for this edition of the Rundown Podcast. Thank you as ever to Jack, and thank you to Maddie. We'll be back very soon with a brand new episode. In the meantime, do hit subscribe over on our YouTube channel. We've got the 7 of 30 podcast coming out as well. Just did a new interview with Mr. Andy Biersack from Black Veil Brides. I can tell you our next guest is the wonderful Mr. John Feldman from Goldfinger as well. So keep an eye out for that very, very soon. And we will see you soon. I've been James Wilson Taylor. Catch you next time.